The following is a recording of this morning's post-cabinet briefing featuring the Minister of Home Affairs and Information, the Honourable Wilfred Abrams, the Minister in the Prime Minister's office with responsibility for culture, Senator Dr. the Honourable Shantal Munro-Knight, and Captain Al Walcott, Security Consultant and Chairman of the Hurricane Preparedness Committee and Emergency Response.
Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the post-cabinet press briefing for this week. So, today we're looking at things dealing with culture, and we're also looking at things in relation to the Barbados Water Authority. And I will also, during the course of this post-cabinet press briefing, further demystify some aspects of parliamentary procedure that have a direct bearing on some things that are very topical right now. But we will start off with Minister Munro-Knight. Cabinet yesterday approved the Heritage Month program for 2023, and the minister will advise you as to what that program looks like. So,
thank you very much, Minister Abrams. As Minister Abrams indicated, so Cabinet approved the Heritage Month calendar, which is part of the Season of Emancipation calendar. I hope that everybody knows by now the Season of Emancipation is running for several months. We would have started on April 14th. It runs until August 27th. But in June, we have a full month that is dedicated to heritage. And it is really to commemorate the inscription of historic Bridgetown and its garrison on the UNESCO World Heritage List, which was done in 2011. So every year in June, we commemorate and celebrate. But importantly as well, I think in particular in the moment that we are in as a country, as we mature into becoming a republic, the Heritage Month is also about us appreciating our cultural heritage and its importance to building national identity and national consciousness as well. And it's for this reason, particularly for this year, that we are focusing a lot more in terms of reflecting on some of the traditions that would have helped build this country and perhaps are still important to us, again, maturing and developing as a society. I want to just talk about a couple of the signal activities that will be happening in the context of Heritage Month. So first, on just actually tomorrow, St. Mary's Church, which is one of the partners that is working with us in the context of Heritage Month, they will be having Jazz in the Yard. And I want to encourage Barbadians to come on out to that event. It's Jazz in the Graveyard. Where they'll be doing some storytelling and just talking about the history of the church and its involvement in the context of the emancipation story. So a very, very important event because very often we take religion and the church outside of the context of emancipation and what it meant in the role that it played. But additionally, on June 17th, we will be having a major fair at Rock Hall, Freedom Village. And that fair will also be a very important part. One of the things that we'll be doing at that fair is that we will have a corner that will be dedicated to older people being able to tell their stories. So they're going to be able to come, we're going to record those stories as part of our oral history project. But that's not going to be all. It's a day-long activity for the entire family, so everybody can come on out. We're going to have bush teas. We're going to have storytelling about old-time traditions as well. We're also incorporating this year our antiques fair. So that will also be part of the Rock Hall Freedom Village Fair on June 17th. And as well, it's also going to be an international food fair where we will be incorporating a number of the embassies and you'll be able to taste different fare, from several countries on that particular day. The division will also be hosting a paint a picture of your community exhibition, which again is going to encourage people to be able to reflect on their communities and then again visual artists to be able to paint that picture and submit. Again, the ethos there is that we go back to community. We're not focusing again so much on doing big shows, etc., but just making sure that Barbadians themselves, one, can participate, and there's a full understanding of what our cultural heritage means to us, and that is extremely important. We'll be having a number of other activities. We'll be very shortly putting out the entire calendar. We'll be working with a number of different agencies, both governmental and as well as the nonprofit sector, whether it be churches, academia, the university as well. We'll be doing lots of stuff in relation to genealogy, which is extremely important. So lots of important activities happening within the month of June. Before I close, Minister Abrams, I know that the media is going to ask about crop over and where we are with that. So June, Heritage Month, full month of activities, encouraging Barbadians to come out and participate. But just in terms of crop over and where we are, we're in full swing. We're in full swing in terms of crop over. We started last night by a excellent concert by the Barbados Police Service and the National Cultural Foundation. The atmosphere was just fantastic. And I really want to encourage Barbadians, that's the vibe that we want for crop over. Places where people can come out, have a good time safely, and enjoy the music. And that's what we started with last night. We will also then see the start of the crop over Sweet Limes happening from today. We go to John Moore Bar this evening, and then on Saturday as well to another location. So in full swing. But we're, again, not only doing activities for entertainment. Over this weekend, the weekend gone, the NCF would have hosted a series of capacity building workshops with the Calypsonians that are participating in the competition themselves. And that workshop would have been to help them to, again, increase and improve the skills in relation to writing, stage performance, and those other things as well. We talked about the fact that we wanted to focus this year in the context of the NCF on development, and that's what we're doing. Ongoing as well is conversations with stakeholders about how we build out that SOCA 4.0 development aspect, right? And the NCF will be having a launch within the next 2 weeks or so that will give further details. But we will be speaking to how we intend to, again, enhance distribution of the music, how we intend to make sure that we build an ecosystem, again, for those that are involved in the sector to be able to make sure that we enhance their skills and then their ability as well, not only in the context of Barbados to make a living, but also internationally as well. You would have heard again that we would have had the Junior Monarch semi-finalists that would have been announced. So a number of things are happening. We are continuing to make good on our promise to make sure that we engage the stakeholders. And I think so far we are having a fairly peaceful and consensual crop over. We hope to keep it that way.
Minister Munro-Knight downplayed significantly what happened last night. Last night, she said it was excellent. It was beyond excellent. It was beyond excellent. Those who chose to come out, and there were a lot of people out last night, they partied in a very, very safe space. We got to see the BHD World runner, winner, previous junior monarchs, former road march monarchs, calypso monarchs, and it was a fantastic presentation. And then something else novel happened. Most of the artists who came on, the familiar artists like Lead Pipe and Sadis, most of the artists that you expect to hear from this crop over dropped their new tunes last night. So people always wonder when the music coming out. A lot of the new songs dropped last night, so you can expect them to go into rotation from here. So it was a fantastic effort by the NCF, and I just wish to give them full props for that. So now I will turn you over to Captain Walcott from the Barbados Water Authority, so he can update you as to their readiness for the hurricane season, in particular with respect to water storage, independent generation capacity, anything else that probably fits under that remit.
First, let me start with the potable water storage. To date, we have 32 new reservoirs or refurbished reservoirs in function, and they can give us a storage capacity of about 32 million imperial gallons of water for storage. And remember, these were some of the projects that were on stream over the last couple of years to have an improvement in our storage capacity at the Water Authority. There are 10 that are still under construction, and when they're completed, that will give an additional 7 million gallons for our storage capacity. So I think we have improved somewhat on our ability to store water, and going forward, I think that will benefit us in case of any prolonged outages. As far as the emergency generation is concerned, we've made some very steady progress. We were challenged by the ministry and the government to have the generators in place, and since ELSA, we've been able to have the 32 generators which will be available for operation in the event of a prolonged power outage across the island. 19 of them are connected and operational, meaning that they were already existing generators, but we've also been able to complete 13 other generators, and we're waiting on light and power with scheduled connection to be done between the 6th and the 19th of June, and that's already planned and already happening across the areas where the generators are installed. So we've been able to improve our generation capacity, and it will benefit us in the event of a prolonged outage, as long as the infrastructure of the pumping stations, etc., are up and running. We could then get our stations running so that we will then reduce the need for the tanker service. And we have a heavy reliance on the tanker service, and one of the challenges we do have with the tanker service, because it is also an operational service, means that throughout the normal work, if there's an outage, the tankers need to respond. And obviously, with the vehicles going up and down, taking that heavy load of water, we have some challenges with getting parts from the vehicles that we have, especially there are some Ivoco vehicles. And what we have done is that we have made contact with the company Interex in the UK, and they are going to be shipping the parts that we need in another, they give us the ETA of 2 months for the shipment. So with that shipment coming in, then we will be able to increase the number of the potable water tankers by 12. So we have 27 water tankers that are in service with no issues, and then those 12 tankers that need the parts to be fixed, we will then be able to get them on the road and available for if they need for operation. So that's where we are with the water tankers. As far as the wastewater is concerned, not much talk is given about wastewater, but just to let you know that the wastewater system cannot be shut down during a storm. Obviously, we'll get the backup, so we have to ensure that our 2 plants and the lift stations are able to run if there's a power outage. So both the Bridgetown and the South Coast plants are operational. We've just been finishing off the installation of a new generator at the Bridgetown plant, and then the generators at the lift stations that support each system, whether it's the Bridgetown or the South Coast system, they were tested under load, and they are operational in the event there's an power outage, that the wastewater system can continue to work, which is necessary and important for our systems. The other thing that I would like to mention is in relation to water storage. And very often we find that when the all clear is given, that persons are calling for tanker service. And one of the things that we would like to emphasize to the public, especially for this season, is the importance of storage of water. 5 gallons per day per person per household. And not the PET bottles, but try to get some containers that can hold at least 5 gallons, or even if you can have more, so that you can last for at least 2 days until operations become normal, if we're not so severely impacted and then we can ask for the tanker service where required. But fortunately, as long as as I mentioned before, as long as the systems are up and running well, we could turn to our emergency generators so that you could get water through the distribution system. I'll pause there for now if there are any questions, Minister. Or
We
anything
do
else.
this at the end.
At the end, okay.
So just by way of further explanation, this government took a position that as much as possible, all our critical departments and services should be able to operate independently. As we know, during ELSA, when the electricity was down, many areas were cut off from water as well. So your electricity went down, but your water went down as well. And it wasn't that the pipes were broken. It was simply that they had no generation capacity to push the water down the pipes to actually reach you. So the decision was taken that as much as possible, all of the pumping installations must have their own independent generation so that you, the public of Barbados, is not held hostage to when the electricity comes back up to receive water. One of the critical things that we need to restore as a priority following a weather event or a climatic event is actually the supply of water. You can do without many things. You cannot do without clean water. So this is why there's a focus on this today. And the BWA would, the Minister Bradshaw yesterday presented her report on certain activities in the BWA, and also she gave an update in relation to the generators installation and also the capacity of the Water Authority. Now, before I get into the crux of what it is I want to present to you, following something Captain Al said, this is the start of hurricane month. So there was a press conference at DEM the other day where we outlined a lot of the readiness procedures and where we were as a country. So that report was pretty much presented then. But yesterday in Cabinet, as I also presented the Cabinet, and we were asked to list some areas of concern. One of the areas of concern that came up is persons tampering with the assets of the emergency services. Now, Captain Al spoke about the generation capacity. It is all well and good to have the generation capacity and the storage of diesel in the areas, but that assumes a lot of things. That assumes that the diesel is going to be there when you need it. What we have discovered recently with the hurricane shelters and also with other persons who have generators is that some lawless persons have been stealing the diesel, siphoning off the diesel from the generators. So it means that we cannot preposition in many cases to have the generators available constantly. So if, let's say for some reason the electricity goes down in a particular area, all things being equal with the increased generation capacity, you would expect the Water Authority to be able to kick in immediately to pick it up. In some instances, they won't be able to, because the decision has been taken not to pre-fill all of the diesel storage. And that is because when you fill the diesel storage, there's so many installations that it's not possible to man all of them. We cannot have security at all of them. In some instances, there are cameras, but the cameras don't seem to deter people who come with masks. They survey the area and they move so as to avoid detection by the cameras. So what is meant to be something that creates a seamless transition in the generation of and the distribution of water to the benefit of Barbadians has become hamstrung by the fact that some people insist on stealing the diesel. So in the approach of a weather event, in addition to all the other things that we have to do and all the other things we have to take into consideration, like prepositioning equipment, like prepositioning food, like prepositioning manpower, we now have to also think in the run-up, in the last few hours running up to a weather event, to try to get diesel through the traffic, to fill up the diesel tanks, to be able to allow the Water Authority and other installations to seamlessly move ahead when generation is required. come on. This is unreasonable. Yesterday, having had that discussion yesterday at Cabinet, having advised the BWA that we wanted them to speak about their generation capacity, I was at the police service concert and I got a call from Sabu Best. Sabu is overseas, I think, in Geneva. And Sabu called to tell me that the security company alerted them that the big radar in St. Joseph, that some people were in the process of breaking in. And they went, the people ran away. Then the people came back. The police were detached to the area and the persons fled the scene. And they left behind a number of filled 5-gallon containers of diesel. And in the roadway leading up to it, we found other empty containers. So they intended to drain that diesel tank. And that is what is, that radar installation is critical. It is critical for our early warning. It's critical for us to be able to see what is going on. The radar cannot be down. That radar also informs the air traffic control of weather systems. That radar is critical to the national security of Barbados. It must operate 24/7. It cannot be interrupted. If electricity goes down, the radar must be able to continue operating to provide the information to the airport, to provide the information to the police, the BDF, to DEM, to all who need it. And that radar actually provides a service to other Caribbean territories as well. It is unacceptable that people keep breaking in to steal the diesel that powers the generator that powers the radar. I'm asking people to have a conscience. This came up as an issue. This is a significant enough issue that we're raising it here. Stop stealing the diesel that the emergency services depend on to protect you and to secure Barbados. I don't think I can make it any more clearly than that. And I would appreciate if the press would work with me in getting this out. There are so many installations around the place. There's so many. Water Authority, things connected with Met, other services, emergency shelters. We cannot possibly police all of them. We put ourselves at a disadvantage when we have to allow those tanks to be empty and then rushing around trying to fill them before a weather event because people insist on stealing diesel. I'm asking the press to work with us on this one and please get that message out there. Enough is enough. Having said that, I had undertaken with the press before to demystify some of the aspects of governance and to explain why certain things happen. As you would be aware, recently the Child Protection Bill and the Child Justice Bill were subject to second reading speeches in the Parliament. So Minister Kurt Humphrey would have presented the Child Protection Bill and I would have presented the Child Justice Bill. After we did our initial presentations, what would normally happen is that other persons would speak on it. And then at the end of that, the bill will be read a third time, sent to committee that goes through the sections of the bill. Make sure the bill is in order. If something has to be amended, it's amended there. And then you report progress to His Honor the Speaker, and eventually the bill is passed. So normally, the bill is laid, the second reading speeches happen, and generally, the second reading speeches and the committee and the passing of the bill occur on the same day, in the same sitting. That's what normally happens. For those who are paying attention, at the end of Minister Humphrey's speech, his presentation, he referred his bill to Joint Select Committee, one of the select committees of the Parliament. And the committee he referred it to was a joint committee of both the House of Assembly and also the Senate. Right? So it's a full joint select committee of Parliament. When I spoke as well, I did the same thing and referred it to select committee. What does that mean? Now, Parliament has certain standing committees. Recently, some standing committees were added to the Parliament capacity. And I'm just going to tell you what those are. So, on the 2nd of May 2023, the Committee on Economic and Productive Sectors was added as a joint select committee standing. The members of that joint committee are Mr. C. Gibbs, Dr. the Honorable S. Brown, the Honorable Miss C. Husbands, and Miss K. M.K. Cattle. Right? Those are the members of the Committee on Economic and Productive Sectors. There was a committee as well on governance and policy matters, and the members of that committee, Mr. R.A. Thorne, QC, Dr. R. Springer, JP, Mr. E. Hinkson, and Mr. P. Phillips, JP. Then a third committee was convened, and the members of that committee, Ms. T. Moore, Mr. C. Lane, Ms. C. Ford, and Mr. T. Prescott. So these are now added as joint select committees. So a bill, if necessary, can be referred to them. What happens when you go to select committee? If any member can move that a bill go to select committee, you then pause the debate of that house in Parliament. You then pause the debate of that bill in Parliament, and the matter is referred to the select committee. The select committee can make its own rules as to how it deals with what is referred to it. And the select committee can discuss things like policy. It can discuss particular clauses. It can discuss pretty much anything in relation to the bill. Now, the committee does not only inform itself. These committees are also empowered to take evidence or to call witnesses for the committees. It is envisioned by these committees that these committees will, in consideration of both the child protection legislation and the child justice legislation, will publish their procedure to the public, so they're going to let the public know exactly what's going on. They're also going to invite comments from the public in relation to the bills. They have the power to call persons who have submitted their comments to give evidence or to appear before the committee, or to submit further instructions by email or whatever. So stay tuned, and those committees through Parliament will ensure or to publish how they plan to operate in relation to the bills. What is critical to note is that the bills have not passed. They are not yet law. I'm hearing some discussions out there as if the bills are a fait accompli, or if the bills have already been passed and they're being put into action. That is not the case. The public is going to have its chance to weigh in on areas of concern for it, to write in with their comments or their suggestions. They can be invited by the committee. And what normally happens is we have a large enough interest group, right? That interest group might be invited to give evidence or speak on behalf of the group that they represent to present the case. But as I said, the committee has the authority and the ability to ask you to say, I noticed that this came in, invite you to come and explain yourself further, explain what's of concern to you, explain what you think it should be. And when the committee has finished sitting, the committee is going to submit a report to Parliament. What has happened in many instances where bills have been referred to select committee is that the opinion of the public or the opinion of those giving the evidence has been taken into account, and the bills have been adjusted, they've been amended, and what eventually passes might not necessarily be the bill that is there, but a bill having taken into consideration the input of concerned persons, right? We already know one of the things that is going to be taken into account. Under the child protection legislation, there's certain areas where if failure to report abuse or whatnot can be met with a summary conviction. And now the policy of this government is to reserve criminal convictions for criminal activities. Where things are procedural or administrative, then you need to look at civil penalties. You keep hearing the Prime Minister talking about civil penalties, the Attorney General talking about civil penalties. So fines, other things that do not necessarily result in a criminal conviction. So for example, if I have a responsibility or I see something happening to a child and I choose to not get myself involved where the law felt it should, Is it an overtly criminal act? Technically, no. The law prohibits it, or the law rules against it. So technically, it stands as it stands now to be considered a criminal act. But is that something that we should give somebody a criminal conviction for, as opposed to dealing with it in another way to encourage compliance, right? So that's where we're looking to do in the civil sanctions. Now, recent legislation has included the civil sanctions where appropriate, right? The civil penalties where appropriate, as opposed to criminalizing people for every breach of a regulation or something. When this bill was initially being drafted, it was being drafted with criminal penalties in mind. We could have held back this bill and tried to adjust all of the things that were now current, or we could have laid this bill in Parliament, and we knew that this bill was going to select committee where we can adjust certain things that needed to be adjusted. And the decision was taken to lay the bill because we needed to start the discussion on it in order to get it passed as quickly as possible. What is happening with our children is of great concern to the government. It's of great concern to the government. And you never get a bill entirely right to the satisfaction of everybody. No matter how many people you consult with, when you lay that, somebody else will have an issue with it or point out something that you did not see. Sometimes you read something, so many times you actually don't see what's there anymore. So knowing that the intention was to refer both of these bills to select committee, we put the bills forward, having consulted widely with stakeholders, and also these are of significant import to the people of Barbados, that consultation with the public at a granular level must be encouraged and be entertained. And you're probably going to see that going forward a lot more. This is why those select committees, the joint select committees of both houses, were created. So as much as possible, we plan to have consultation on the things that affect you. There's certain things like money laundering or whatnot. There's certain things that are strictly formative that do not require or will not benefit from open public consultation. Certain things that touch and concern the average Barbadian, touch and concern our children, that are wedge issues, things like that, the intention is to refer and to get as many inputs as possible so that legislation, when it is eventually passed, is as well informed as it could be and tries to cover as many bases as is possible, knowing that we're never going to get 100% consensus on anything. So, once again, for all those who wish to weigh in, who have an opinion, who have a concern, I urge you please to monitor. Once the rules of the committee and the procedures are published by the committee, we will ensure that they go into wide circulation. We will share them with the press. They will be shared on GIS, through public affairs, through CBC, through all of our established media partners. We will ensure that every Bajan knows what the procedures are and knows exactly how to intervene in this process. So you have nothing to worry about. This is not being done in secret. The intention is to open this for public input and to factor that input into whatever the final bill is. I don't think it could be any more clearer than that. And the other thing I'm going to ask, I'm going to ask people, please read the legislation. Read it for yourself. Inform yourself. Certain things are suggested as being present in the legislation which are not there. So rather than depend on somebody else's reading and interpretation of it and then forming your opinion based on that, I urge you, we will put all the legislation out. I will actually ensure that by next week, both the links for both the child justice legislation, the child protection legislation, anything else that's referred to select committee, is put out and circulated so everybody can see for themselves what it is. Everybody has a chance to read for themselves what it is and to inform themselves. There's a lot of fake news going on out there. There's a lot of misinformation going on out there. If you wish to intervene, I ask you to intervene from a point of being informed. Read it for yourself, form your own opinion, discuss it with others who've also read it, and then feel free to intervene in the process. Yesterday, at Cabinet, Minister McConney had to pick up and leave and go to deal with the situation that was caused by gross misinformation. Right? She made her, I'm not going to go into all of that. She made her statement clearly, unambiguously, and dealt with it. But that required the disruption of a process and a whole minister to go because she was not planning to speak from a position of hearsay. She knew what the position was, but she went herself to make sure nothing has changed since she was last informed. I'm asking people, please do not just grab hold of what is being said out there on social media in particular and run with it as if it was truth. If you're in a position to inform yourself, check for yourself the truth of something before you send it on. Check for yourself the truth of something before you send it on. One of the greatest difficulties that this government is facing is having to run and disabuse people of notions, erroneous and malicious notions that have no basis in truth. Let us try to make the systems work. We welcome feedback. We welcome contributions. We welcome Barbadians and the public playing a part in the process. But please do that from a position of information. Thank you. The floor is open to questions.
Minister, one couple questions from me. Firstly, to the Barbados Water Authority, just so that we could have an idea as to the context of the improvements in terms of the storage at the BWA, etc., and the increased generation. One, give us an idea as to what the storage was before those improvements, and also with the new added generation. Can you give us an idea as to how long? Obviously, these generators have to be refilled, but how long you can run? How long we can pretty much sustain within an outage?
Okay. I wouldn't have the information as relates to the storage, but I can say to you that as far as the emergency generators are concerned, the generators will be able to run for 6 to 8 hours. And then we have in place a plan for schedule for refueling. We've also have contact and made MOUs with companies to help us to refill the stations. So we can run for 6 to 8 hours, and then we have a scheduling plan for the refueling of the generators.
So that's 6 to 8 hours?
Yes.
Okay. And Minister, in terms, you mentioned the issue of persons stealing diesel fuel. But based on what you're saying, is the only option at this point in securing what can only be considered as critical national security infrastructure, moral suasion? I mean, that's the only option. Is there some long-term plan in place to ensure that we can have this seamless transition that is so critically needed in our hurricane season? If not this hurricane, in place by this hurricane season for the future.
Let me put it in context for you. How many installations do you all have generations?
We have 32 so far.
32. Then we're looking at the hurricane shelters. The aim is to have generation capacity for all the Category 1 hurricane shelters, which is about almost 40. Right? So 32 and 40 is 72. Then we're looking at other areas. We're looking at the hospital, the polyclinics, the whatever. You seeing the problem there? We cannot police all of those. We cannot station a security guard next to the radar in St. Joseph every night solely for the purpose of catching diesel thieves. That installation had cameras, but those persons have obviously surveilled the area properly because they came over the fence and they bent some of the cameras, so the cameras were not pointing at the tank so it wouldn't catch them in the action. So we caught them coming over, but there would have been no footage of them actually draining the tank because that camera was diverted, right? We can only do what we do. You put up fences, put barbed wire on the top of it, you put cameras, and people still go and steal. So we are now at the point of moral suasion. I will tell you that if one of those persons is caught, or whoever is caught doing this, I hope they feel the full weight of the law. Right? I won't attempt to prejudice anybody's day in court, but I hope that anybody caught red-handed stealing diesel from one of the critical installations feels the full weight of the law. But it now is not even just, Colville, a matter of trying to reach those persons. The persons who know that their friend's doing it, tell them stop. The persons who know that they're buying diesel from somebody out of a 5-gallon drum, don't do it. People don't steal the diesel entirely for their own use. Quite often they steal the diesel and sell it. I am not going to buy diesel or fuel to fill up my vehicle from somebody selling it to me from a backyard and pouring it in with a funnel. So yes, Colville, we are at the point now of moral suasion. We are at the point now of moral suasion. The fences and barbed wire and cameras are doing their job in some instances, but there's some people who are persistent past that point. The thieves ran off last night when they were first detected, and they came back. Understand what I'm telling you? They ran off last night when they were first detected. Persons from my office went down there, they made the call to police, they surveyed the area, whatnot, and then they moved off waiting for the police, and when they moved off, the people came back. So yes, Colville, at some point in time, you have to make an appeal. All the other things that we can do, we're going to do. We're going to try to get the police to increase patrols to certain areas, but for somebody who's sitting watching, they will wait for the police to come and the police to leave, and then they will go and do what they have to do. So at some point, you have to actually speak to the heart of people. What you are doing is wrong, and in doing so, you are crippling the government's ability to plan and activate its emergency procedures. And that may have consequences for you, for your community, for your family, and for the wider Barbados. Please stop.
Minister, you would have said that they would have hit multiple sites around the island. I just want to know if you can quantify how much diesel has been lost.
I actually can't. I actually can't quantify how much diesel. I mean, it's a lot. We're getting the complaints from the shelters. We're getting complaints from the schools. Because the shelters in the most instances are schools. We're getting complaints from the schools that people are siphoning off the diesel. And we have gone and seen where the pipes have been cut and where they've been trying to steal it. And we know the levels have dropped because the levels have dropped in the tank without the generators having been used since they were last filled. So it is happening. I can't quantify for you exactly what, but I mean, we caught people on camera yesterday breaking in. It is happening.
How widespread is the issue? That it happened 5 times, a dozen times?
It has happened significantly more than 5. I raised this today because this happened last night. We have raised it already, but this literally happened after we raised it in cabinet as an issue, and not 3 hours, 4 hours after being in cabinet speaking on it, I have to deal with this on behalf of my office.
And it started recently, or this has been going on for months?
It's been going on for a while, but it has increased in recent times. I mean, the Water Authority can tell you that they're being hit with it as well. So it is real, right? And what we do not want is for a system to be detected, for the watches and warnings to go out, and then where we expect to have capacity to generate doesn't have it because people stole the diesel.
Is there any consideration, again, this might be something in the long term, but is there any consideration, given the fact that this is critical infrastructure, so to stiffen the penalties for incursions on those infrastructure?
Colville, we will consider all options to try to bring this to a halt. I am now at the point of moral suasion, right? I'm at the point that we're in the hurricane season. There's a lot at stake. Please understand the consequences of your action. I'm at the point of moral suasion, but this is something that will likely be raised again, but not will likely, this will be raised again in Cabinet, and I will have discussions with the Attorney General as to how best we can deal with this. But for now, without even going so far down the road, I'm asking people to stop it now. I don't want that message to be lost. It is happening, please stop.
Another question for the Water Authority. Yeah, right. Based on the experience of ELSA with the prolonged outages in water due to the electricity, I'm just trying to get this soundbite correct. Given with the increased generation at this point, what assurances can Barbadians now have that we're not going to see a repeat of that if electricity goes? They're going to be out of water for a prolonged period as well. What assurances now that does this increased generation provide for us?
Right, as I said, all things being equal, and the infrastructure holds up, then the generation would allow us to pump water again through the distribution system. Obviously, we'll have to, if it is a prolonged outage, say for example, we have a big event, and the period of recovery is a long period, then we'll have to, at some point, have to shut down for the refueling and then start back. So we have to start thinking of emergencies. So we cannot operate in a normal setting in an emergency situation. We have not gone through an emergency situation for a long time. So the main thing there, yes, we will be able to run the pumping stations and to give persons water. But there are times when we might have to shut down to allow for refueling, etc., etc. And that's when the personal storage of water kicks in. So it's a whole package. It's not just an individual thing that we need to do.
And normally when you have to refuel, how long was the estimated time frame for that downtime?
Okay, let me take this. Yeah. Colville, I'm glad that you prefaced that honestly, but you want to get your soundbite right. Now, understand the process. It's not simply how long it takes to refill. The impact of a category 1 is not the impact of a category 2, not the impact of a category 3, 4, or 5. These pumping stations are not located within one area. They're spread about to provide maximum coverage for the country. The ability to get the fuel truck to the tank to refuel it depends on whether the roads are cleared, how many trees are down, if the road has washed away, if the bridge is broken, things like that. So it's not a simple thing. So what the independent generation does is give you a chance. You're not dependent on Light and Power getting all of its poles and infrastructure back up. You have the ability to actually generate from that point. But that still depends on your being able to get the fuel to that point. So you're not going to have if we have a bad event, we're not going to have an uninterrupted supply of anything. Chances are it's going to be rationed. The water may come on. When we get the tanks full, we may have to schedule the pumping of water between a period of this and that, which then allows people to fill up and whatnot, and weather out when it has to shut back down. You're also dealing with a fixed amount of trucks. Those trucks, those fuel trucks, have to service not just the Water Authority, but they have to go and service the hurricane shelters. They have to service the QBH. They have to service the police stations, the fire service, all that critical infrastructure. So if we have a bad system, there will be disruption. There will be inconvenience. What the independent generation of the BWA allows it to do, it allows it to manage its own business and not have to depend on another entity. But all will still have to be dependent on the transportation network in relation to the fuel oil and the refilling.
Minister, one other question, just slightly off topic, but within your portfolio.
This is a post-cabinet press briefing on matters discussed in cabinet yesterday.
Understood, but still within your portfolio. We saw the resignation, or we read about the resignation of the former superintendent of prisons, now former superintendent of prisons, nurse, and we knew that there have been several investigations that would have been launched surrounding the prisons. However, the public has not been appraised of the findings of any of those investigations at this point. Could you shed some light on this for us, please, sir?
So, first of all, the superintendent of prisons did not resign.
Sorry, retire, sorry.
He is at retirement
Semantics,
age.
yes.
No, it's not semantics. It is a critical difference. He is retiring in the normal scheme of things.
Right.
He has reached retirement age, and he has indicated that he wished to retire. Right? That's one.
Right.
Two, I've said on a number of times that we try to be as transparent as we can be where circumstances allow. People keep drawing a reference to the fact that we were completely open with the Dodds inquiry, and we pretty much divulged all of the findings of the Dodds inquiry. The JS inquiry. Dodds Prison is not JS. Dodds Prison is a national security installation. I can tell you that fence was broken at JS, but if fence is broken at Dodds, I'm not telling you that. I can tell you that there's a lack of critical things at the government industrial school, and this is how it compromised the operation of the school. In relation to prison, for obvious reasons, I cannot tell you that. Certain things have been raised and flagged in relation to the Dodds inquiry, and we are in the process of working on and resolving a number of them. We are looking things that I can share with you. We're looking at the rehabilitation aspects. We're looking at getting CVQs for people who are in prison. We're looking at expanding the capacity, educational capacity at prison. We're looking at instituting certain core subjects that are going to be available for all levels of persons who are incarcerated at Dodds, right? But those are not the things that you actually want to hear about. You want the juice, right? And quite frankly, because the prison being what it is, let me make it even clearer. With respect to the inquiry for the prison, that report has been seen by the National Security Council. It is a very, very limited group of persons who have seen that. That is not even available to the entire cabinet of Barbados for obvious reasons. Right? We are acting on as many of the things as we can. There are recommendations that we're going to put the structures in place to deal with them. Right? But with respect to what you got in terms of disclosure in relation to the JS, you're not going to get that in relation to Dodds because it's a national security facility. Yeah. What I can tell you is that from the time we received the report, we immediately started to act on the things that we could act on immediately, and processes were put in place to deal with the other ones that had a longer lead time. Nobody wants unrest in a prison and dissatisfaction in prison, whether it be from officers, whether it be from management, whether it be from the prisoners themselves. And equally, in keeping with our government's position on rehabilitation and restorative justice and those ideals, then we have to put the systems in place to actually see that in the prison. I have said before, we are looking to move to dispatch on electronic monitoring because nobody should be in prison who doesn't have to be there. If there's another avenue for you to be monitored and controlled while technically speaking in custody, then we explore that. I have no difficulty with you going and living at home if you have an ankle bracelet on, and the one reason you were there or on remand was the fact that they couldn't be sure that you obey a curfew. Right? So all of the things that lend themselves to a model penal system and a modern judicial process we're looking to do. In respect of bail, quite frankly, bail is a right. Except in certain circumstances, bail is a right. And we need to put in place all of the flexible initiatives that allow you to be granted bail. I don't want anyone in the prison who does not have to be in the prison. If you're in the prison, it is that you're serving a sentence and that there was no other way to manage you or your attendance in court other than to put you there. Once you don't fall in that category, then we don't necessarily want you in there. Right? Equally, while you are there, we must provide for you every opportunity to be able to better yourself, that you leave a better person. Or if you do not leave a better person, it's because you refuse to avail yourselves of the opportunities that were presented and were made available for you. So a lot is going to be happening at the prison in due course as the initiatives come out. Then we are going to publicize them because we need to be proud of certain things. Our farming program has increased. I mean, we're doing fish farming there. There are a lot of things that are happening at the prison, initiatives that are positive and that lead to the overall development of the inmates. Right? We're looking at staff advancement opportunities, balancing out the training of staff, giving everybody a chance to reach their full potential who are within the service at the prison. So a lot of these things are things you can be seeing coming out, and we are going to publicize them because it is a big deal. With respect to giving the nitty-gritty on the report and deficiencies, then I absolutely cannot do that for obvious reasons.
Okay.
Right, Captain Walcott, the 32 billion gallons that are being stored, how long can that last? How long can that service the country in the case of a large event?
All right, so I'm not an engineer, but the the storage capacity will then, when the system is running, for example, the distribution system is running, part of it will be to store the water. And then when we shut off, we'll be able to shut off water to the customers, but then we'll be able to fill the storage capacity so that we can use it again. So I'm not able to tell you how long it will last, but the fact that we have been able to improve our storage capacity means that we will then have enough water so that we can have it available for customers as required.
All right, just to help Captain Walcott with that one, and this is because I was at one point in the Minister for Water. Look, with the reservoirs, is water in, water out, right? So the storage capacity is actually maximum storage capacity, but it's not. We don't just supply from stored water. The water comes in to keep refilling the reservoirs as water is going on. So it's not that you drain a reservoir, right, and then you try to fill it back up. It is constantly being refilled. The other reason the storage capacity is critical. Coming on to a storm, you shut down certain things. So during the currency of the storm, while the storm is impacting Barbados, water going in and water coming out will be shut off. So that water is captured. Prior to Elsa, before these reservoirs are completed, when we came into government, we inherited some reservoirs that an engineering assessment indicated could not withstand a Category 1 storm. One of those reservoirs was up top there by Castle Grant, up above CBC site. Right? When Elsa came, we had to drain that reservoir because we were not sure that reservoir would survive the storm. And imagine that the reservoir gave away. Then all who were downstream of that, in addition to storm water, you'd be dealing with other things. So we didn't want to cause a panic, so we quietly shut down, we quietly drained off those reservoirs to ensure that there was not a calamitous occurrence caused by the collapse of a reservoir. We've tried to replace, rehab, rebuild, increase the storage capacity. Because of the new reservoirs that we have, the brand new tanks and the renovated tanks, if a storm is coming, then we actually do not have to drain out the reservoirs. So all of the total capacity we have available to store the water, to then be able to release it once the event has passed and the all clear being given. So that is why the new capacity and the total capacity is so important, because while we may have technically had certain capacities before, we had to hive off a lot of that water, so that the capacity we had on a normal day was not the capacity we had post an event. It was significantly less.
Just to mention, Minister, the previous reservoirs, we have both underground reservoirs, which you find that just with a reservoir house on it, an old wooden house on it. And what the engineers have done is, now that you see driving around, you'll see some big black tanks. Those are the new tanks that were built up and set up for the storage. They've increased the storage capacity, but also those tanks can withstand, I think they're gauged to Cat 5 storms, so that if there's a big event, that we are satisfied that our infrastructure will stand up. And as the minister is saying, that we don't just store the water and then we distribute. The distribution system is such that as long as there's pumping going on, that the customers will get the water. And the new tanks allow the engineers now, if they shut the water off for the customers, they can then go to building up the capacity into the reservoirs. So that's the new tanks will allow us to do that. Well, the previous system, we were not able to do that. So that's the change and the improvement as it relates to the system.
Okay, so there being no other questions, I want to thank all of you for coming out with us. And as I said, we will continue to try to demystify some of the operations of the cabinet and the parliament, because while the things that we do, in many instances the public of Barbados does not necessarily understand why we do them and the purpose for which they're actually done. So as it goes along at convenient intervals, we will explain some of those processes so you understand what happens behind the scenes and realize that there's really no great mystery to a lot of what is being done in your name. So I thank you all for coming out, and I wish you a great weekend.